Hello, everybody. Today is June 25th. Welcome back into the Keep Boone Healthy Facebook channel. I am David Jackson with the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us once again. Lots of news to continue to get out this week as Governor Roy Cooper extended phase 2 of North Carolina's easing of restrictions and has also now put in place as part of Executive Order 147 a mandatory requirement for face coverings in North Carolina. Of course, the town of Boone has had some unique ordinances written around some of these executive orders over the last several weeks. So we thought it would be best to try to clarify where all of those sit and how visitors and locals alike can expect to interact with the town of Boone as we move forward. So for that conversation, we have Town Manager John Ward and also Interim Police Chief Andy LeBeau. So guys, both thank you for joining us on such short notice and trying to make sense of all that's come down here in the last 24 hours. John, we'll start with you. Just the order in general that has come out, now that you've had a chance to digest that and talk with staff, how do you see the governor's executive order really guiding what the town of Boone does from an operational standpoint and certainly a law enforcement response standpoint?
Well, the governor's order is more restrictive. The current executive order and emergency declaration by the town of Boone actually only applied to indoor commercial facilities and town offices. So the governor's directive that was issued yesterday does greatly expand that. So what we're going to do is we're going to step back and we will be moving forward with recognizing the governor's order and enforcing that order throughout the town of Boone.
Chief LeBeau, I think one of the things that became immediately noticed in the document was that as far as the state is concerned, they actually wrote in that emphasis will be placed on education as part of the enforcement aspect of that. That's something that the town of Boone has been doing quite well from the start of all of this. So will that make things, I guess, more consistent from your standpoint in terms of dealing with individuals and businesses and being able to lead with education first?
Yeah, it certainly will. From the very beginning, when the first executive order came out, we wrote protocol about how we were going to respond so all of our officers could respond in a consistent way. And we decided we were going to lead off with education and then follow up with a warning. And then if person just refused to comply, then we would work with the district attorney's office to find out what charges may be appropriate. With the new executive order 147, the governor actually emphasized the exact same thing that we were doing. So yeah, it's good for us in that we don't have to change our protocol.
And I think, again, as we move forward in this time, we have all talked amongst ourselves and encourage you to make sure that you seek out the executive order if you can, read through the nuances to the language, because there are some language changes and things that are important to note as this order is applied. And you can, of course, find that right on our website at boonechamber.com and get all of that information. With that said, one of the big changes in this particular executive order is that from an enforcement standpoint, there's a little bit different language written around who's kind of liable, if you will, in these types of situations, whereas the previous town of Boone ordinances have really been written around the individual. This governor's order has a little bit more language about businesses. So I guess we can ask both of you, and Andy, we can start with you first. How do you anticipate that interaction going? Should a business have someone that is not wanting to comply with the order? How do they best get a hold of you, and what could come to both the business and the individual in those circumstances?
Yeah, if certainly the executive order puts the burden on the business owner to be in compliance with this executive order with the customers that are entering. We certainly don't want to have any type of confrontations between store employees and customers. If resistance is met, then certainly they can call us and we'll come and handle the situation. But we've been on the phone with businesses all day, just they have questions. It's new to all of us. So we're just asking that businesses be reasonable and make an effort to make sure that their customers are in compliance with them, since the governor has placed the burden on the business itself.
We've heard a lot of language too about the, from the enforcement aspect of that. In previous ordinances, we've heard that class 2 misdemeanor conversation come up a little bit, but this is a little bit different where trespassing is involved. This is something that your office deals with every day. So can you walk people through what that kind of looks like if you were able to, or had to be called in to deal with someone who is non-compliant? How would the trespassing issue be applied?
Yeah, this is a much easier scenario for us, just because trespassing is an issue that we deal with every single day. Every day, businesses call us up because they have someone in there causing problems and they want them to leave. And so the person generally is either they're gone when we arrive, they've already decided to leave on their own, or they're there when we arrive, and then we tell them the owner, the manager wants you to leave, and if they leave, great, no problem. And if they refuse to leave, then it's a violation of state law of second-degree trespassing that occurs in our presence. And at that point, the person can be either cited or even a physical arrest if needed. And so, yeah, it's a pretty simple process.
And John, I think it's important to note that through all of the COVID-19 mayhem that we have been involved in since March, the town has maintained a solid relationship with all parties involved, and there have been no prosecutions to this point. If I'm accurate in that, is that correct?
That's correct. We've relied heavily upon education, and I think that's what everyone's intent was initially with any of these executive orders or declarations of emergency. We've erected signs in our downtown area, which is our most heavily traveled foot traffic area of town, on approximately 50-something street posts in both English and in Spanish, encouraging additional education about this topic and supporting the 3 W's, the wear a mask, wash your hands, and wait 6 feet apart to social distance. We'll be working with the Chamber and the DBDA to place banners throughout the downtown area. We're in the process of partnering with the Boone Rotary Club to place banners near the welcome signs at the entrances to Boone, encouraging these safe practices. And finally, I think that I would just like to call out that our most involved department in the education phase has been our police department. There's quite a bit of information and rumors swirling around the enforcement, but our enforcement has been through education and through compliance. And we're really just reaching out to both our visitors, our residents, and what will be the largest number of people returning to town, which will be the ASU students, making sure they're fully aware of what the requirements are and helping them get into compliance with that request.
We'll talk more specifically about students here in a moment, but John, I guess to give you an opportunity to answer that same question I posed to Chief LeBeau a moment ago, from a messaging standpoint to businesses, from your chair as town manager, what would you say to that business that is saying right now, okay, so I'm going to be more involved in this process? How would you ask them as town manager to make sure that they are compliant, as Chief said, to have a reasonable effort at making sure people are in compliance, but then when they have that issue of maybe somebody that doesn't necessarily want to wear the face covering, how they should deal with it at that point? Yeah,
well, just to reiterate what Interim Chief LeBeau stated, which is we're not encouraging anyone to get into a confrontation in order to do that. We will send assistance and we will be there to help you through that situation through dialing 911 and seeking the assistance of the police department. The other things that the town of Boone has been doing is we've been constantly updating our web page as well. We have a COVID-19 banner at the top of the town webpage, which is www.townofboone.net. And we've been putting more and more information there, along with frequently asked questions in order to further explain some of these more legal and governmental documents. But I think that the other thing that we're trying to reach out and do is both through our DBDA and through our admin intern, we have developed posters that clearly take and consolidate this massive information and make it more appropriate so that the business owners will be able to print out these sheets and post them on the front door. helping interpret these documents. So hopefully that first interaction at the front door will help remind somebody that they need to put the mask on before they come in, limiting any kind of negative interaction.
Chief, I think that there is a thought out there amongst some that in the interactions that we all have with tourists and visitors, that there is a lot of confusion there. Certainly, as people come from other states and come to North Carolina, rules are different from state to state, county to county in some cases even. And I guess I wonder from your standpoint and in talking to your officers, how have those interactions been? Have people been largely understanding that when they drive across the border, things may be different? And ultimately, have they been pretty quick to comply with those changes, whether they're things that the town of Boone has implemented before or something like this, where the governor is applying rules that the entire state will now be under?
Yeah, certainly with the governor's executive order, it does make it easier for us that it's statewide. Of course, we are near two borders with Virginia, but they already have mandatory masks. And Tennessee, and I've talked to some people from Tennessee, and they tell me we're just staying over in Tennessee, so we don't have to worry about the regulations, and that's fine too. That probably helps reduce the spread. Yeah, so the one thing I just want to put out there is we love our community. That's why we do this job, and again, we don't want to be heavy-handed with them. The emphasis is on education, and it's been very successful working with people and working with our businesses to bring about voluntary compliance. And so much so that as long as we've been in this so far, we have not had to criminally charge anybody. So, and it's not, and we've been answering these calls. We've been going and dealing with violations of executive orders since the beginning, but it's just the friendly approach works, at least in Boone.
That makes certainly a lot of sense. And guys, we'll close on this one. I know that a lot of people with the calendar continuing to tick down, we're about to move into the month of July. That means we're a little bit closer to the fall season here, and that means a lot more students coming back, as John mentioned earlier. Appalachian State, Caldwell Community College and Technical Institute, certainly Watauga County Schools getting into this mix here soon. How do both of you and your staffs work alongside those partners to ensure that the safety information, whether it's in the form of an ordinance or in a governor's executive order, is being brought into those conversations and working with those partners to ensure a safe return to those activities as possible?
I think communication is the key there. We've got multiple organizations from the state university down to the county-wide school system, and then we are the host of both of those. So open communication, a lot of brainstorming takes place, and then constant ability to adjust to the changing dynamics. This COVID-19 response changes almost as much as the weather in Boone. And along with that, we have to be ready for that change and be ready to pivot at a moment's notice in order to, whether it be a governor's order, a local ordinance, or simply the numbers that are coming out of the health department. We have to be ready and prepared. So what we're doing is we're looking at multiple scenarios. The plan is always for what we're doing immediately, but also trying to be 2 steps ahead of what the next things that might need to be done. Sometimes those are trying to prepare for worst case scenarios. Sometimes those are trying to prepare for a better case scenario where we are able to open up more businesses and be more accommodating to many more visitors or the students that are planning on returning. So preparing for those different scenarios is a constantly changing thing that we're working really hard to be on top of. Between communications between all the organizations, Watauga County is included in that mix. We are working to make sure that we're prepared for the unknown.
Yeah, and I would just say we talked earlier about working with ASU to make sure that this information is being included in orientation, and so we're going to be following up with them. I'm sure it will be. I'm sure they've thought of this. And then another thing is tomorrow I'm going to be doing a video with Yolanda Adams that she'll be translating into Spanish, probably much of the same conversation, but geared toward the population of our town that doesn't speak English very well. So we want to make sure that they have this information as well.
Well, excellent. We appreciate everything that both of you and your staffs are doing to continue that education piece and the communication. Certainly, I'll agree with both of you. When there's one message, it does seem to certainly be a little bit easier to get that out there, and the governor's executive order does allow us that possibility here. So, again, thanks to a lot of hard work that's been put in by Town of Boone employees. I think it's also important to note that your staffs are leading by example when it comes to these social distancing measures and the face covering. So it's great to see leaders step up in that way, and we certainly appreciate everything you're doing here.
Thank you, David. And yeah, we definitely appreciate our employees. They're working hard. I will say this, if we do have to respond in any type of enforcement role, the officer may take their mask off briefly to make sure that any commands are clear and understood. If they feel it's needed, we want to make sure that people understand what the officer is communicating to them and not muffled. But we will be leading by example by wearing them. But there may be enforcement situations or a firefighter situation where it's necessary that the mask come off briefly and then it'll go back on.
And that was one of those nuanced pieces that was actually included in the executive order too. When you go back and read that, folks, you'll see how that's kind of stepped out and assurances that it's also safe to take your mask off to communicate back to one of those officials if that has been requested. So again, something that you can see in the order. So John, anything that you would like to say, one last shot here on behalf of the town?
No, we just thank everyone for being patient as we move through this process. Again, things have changed rather quickly. Our town staff, I couldn't say better things about them and their ability to get out there and positively represent the town of Boone in order to protect our citizens, visitors, and the students that will be coming back. Really do appreciate all the work that they've done, and the community. The more we come together, hopefully the quicker this will be over and we will be able to get back to what we remember so fondly as normal.
Absolutely. Very well said. And again, we've got links to the Town of Boone website, their COVID site, especially, as well as the governor's new executive order at boonechamber.com. You can head to our new recovery and relaunch page. That's the old local response page, and all of these key documents and links to sites are available right there in a very easy format to find. And hopefully you'll find those pieces informative. So again, thanks for checking us out here on the Keep Boone Healthy Facebook channel. Thanks to Interim Chief Andy LeBeau and John Ward. I'm David Jackson from the Boone Chamber. Thank you.